So then we are back with the more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end, Yirmiyahu the prophet. Then there is a layer of understanding of chapter 1:8 related with the tabernacling, and then on the land of Cush, the first tabernacling of the second tabernacle services restoration period, then places it in a very interesting position because the returning of the holy cities then are at hand. And as far as our country, very important, this country always was friend of Israel, but there is a whole lot more that must be done, and thus far we must admit the information given was not properly said. So then we must try our very best in understanding the original manuscripts, and then obviously understand the fact of the restoration period after 09, and then the returning of the holy cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. So then the first holy city on the land of Cush. As far as our country, as it was said before, there are no Jews, in fact. The situation is, Jews are a mixture of takanot, maasim with instructions. And then the Hebraic original manuscript, only the instructions. So then, the best for this country, as we can understand, would be then the gentlest way of having then the Hebrews returning and completing their first section of these second tabernacle services and restoration period. So then the most important is obviously voting for a president lady in this country, where then these government then would encourage these scripture then in its completion. Very important. Also there is another section related with United Kingdom. As we were aware of in the past, Northern Ireland is then obviously working very diligently to get themselves separated from United Kingdom. The referendum then was already completed, and then they are simply waiting for other developments. And most importantly, at the moment, the Parliament of Northern Ireland went to China to visit with the President himself. So it's a very significant event where we find then many events taking place very fast, and then the expansion of China, the raw materials secured from the Asian countries. We find also then ourselves being in a very bad predicament at the moment, because we understand the BRICS, they are then the initiation of the system coming shortly after some 36 months. We can understand from this point until 36 months. So then during this time is the perfect time for then refurbishing our tax code and then including freighting. So then we are in line with the instructions of the Messiah when he said regarding the freighters of the earth and the new system, where then the combination of trade and computers. So extremely important, voting then for a lady. And the last election, Michelle was then the candidate. But then during this election, during this time, then the ladies must take their stand. And then they must fight and then get the position. Because speaking only of numbers, there are more numbers, more ladies in this country than men. So the obvious is if every lady, if they would vote for Michelle, obviously she would win. But then also includes a plan, and then it is then the first time where a lady then would become president in this country, and then extremely important then later the linking up of the new president, Michelle, and then Lady Elizabeth of England. joining their forces and then obviously combining with many others because of so many changes taking place at the same time. So based from these understandings, then we can truly begin our quest of the new system, understanding then the Chinese, they launched in space not only this equipment regarding then television or the media. As we understand, China has at the moment the largest media in the world. They upgraded their media. So then we can understand when the system becomes available, then what then the media would do, since they have the largest of the world. Any person then doing trade or direct trade with China would want to find how they are doing, what are the dealings, and then other types of deals with other countries, and so on and so forth, because they must have enough information so that they can project their earnings and their investments. So then you find a unit was launched some time ago, some 10 days ago, and the other was launched even further than 10 days ago. One of them regarding then television and media, and the other obviously regarding then the signal of the new system. So we must be prepared for these, because as they said, then this equipment is mostly related of the Asian market. But truly it is not. It is worldwide. So then we can prepare ourselves for this time, and understanding then the gentlest way of having then the Hebrews returning to their services is obviously by electing a president lady. And last election was then Michelle. It's extremely important, because then our concept of church is then changing because of the times and the seasons. There is a place for gatherings, and there is a place for tabernacling. If you study the original manuscripts of the Greco translation, for instance, even the Greco people, when they translated from tabernacling or from Hebrew to the Greco language, they maintained the translation of tabernacling. Extremely important. So then when we read in Yirmiyahu regarding then, and they then stored the holy objects forever and ever. It's not the translation forever and ever. They stored forever and ever for a time. Forever and ever is the Creator. So then, understandably, this continuation of tabernacling must then return, and the first is on the land of Cush. That's why then it's extremely important voting for a lady president in this country. So then, this way, their focus in having always males, then it changes, because their focus should be regarding tabernacling. But thus far they are not doing what they should be doing. And the Messiah said then discipline would come at some point. So obviously during this time until the another election, we can observe then the Creator every time speaking of His holy tabernacles, speaking of tabernacling, and then the events until this time. So don't be surprised if the next president obviously then is a lady. So then obviously would help these Hebrews then return to their services, because then the male figure of this country no longer then would play on their behalf. What should be playing on their behalf is then tabernacling. So then it changes a bit then the understanding of leadership. So then those people who are then in study of the Word, and they begin then to understand regarding tabernacling, they can make a reference of it. But until the ladies they get into power, it is a real fight, because it would be the first time. So since they had their liberties during the 60s, so would be during this time. A great plan, and then understandably the guys thus far they didn't do a nice job. So then it would be a time then since we find ourselves then caught in the Soviet Union with a spy, and then regarding the president of Syria, we made bad judgments because we were never exposed regarding religious militants in our country. Can you imagine if the Catholics in this country were then militants, taking up arms? Can you imagine if the Protestants would take up arms? Or then people of the church then take up arms? So this is what the president over there faces every day. So then religion and militancy, those goes then hand to hand. And it's real tough then making a distinction from those civilians versus those who are religious fanatics but then militant at the same time. So we made the wrong judgment in saying he should go. Absolutely not. We don't understand the intricacies of the problem. Always military, militants, people sometimes untrained, mixing up with rebel groups and then mesmerizing the civilians. It's not as simple as we think. And then they have chemical weapons over there. Can you imagine if the rebels would get a hold of those chemical weapons while taking over then the country, what they would do with it? Because a lot of rebels, they are ignorant. They are not trained military. They go, as they learn, they get their weapons and they learn as they go. But then when they face chemical weapons, they can't make a mistake, or then a vast number of people will die. So then we should truly apologize for saying such bad terms of the president of Syria, and then from then on would make apology also for the president of the Soviet Union, Mr. Putin. And then in order to have our credit then back properly, would obviously go along with Mr. Putin in trying then to refurbish then the politics of Syria, and then later having maybe an election. It is extremely important because this way removes the danger of the chemical weapons and then at the same time restores our name. Because thus far we have done something very bad to the Northern Kingdom by having spies over there, and they are the leaders of the BRICS. And the BRICS at the moment is the very core of the new system. So then by understanding these factors, at the same time, both layers of Gentiles in a certain way, and then tabernacling in another way, and then the separation of the United Kingdom, and then the linking up of the new president with Lady Elizabeth, and then the other realms, how they're going to react amongst themselves, understanding the market of the end. So lots of events taking place at the same time, and very fast in fact. But then understandably, we also have to update our own system, taxation and labeling of parcels, and then freight, containers must be then tracked. And the task is not complicated, it's simply having a visit with the CEOs of the freighters and land their tracking system, and then come up with very comprehensive understanding of taxation and then freighting at the same time. Instant taxation, where the government receives then the taxes instantly, so then it can balance the budget. So then when the system becomes available, then people are then taxed. Always money coming via then the earnings done in the system. So lots of situations going on, and we should be very cautious because thus far we have no friendship with the BRICS. We are not part of their system. We are then in trouble with the market of the world. Our credit then has downgraded. And then we are spending more than ever. And we have a very short time until this 36 months then expires. And then as we understand the Ozarks, they built the Ozarks place over there, the new capital of the US. But then should we move over there as a new capital and then FEMA camps, rounding up the non-legals and place them in camps? How much this is going to cost us? So we have to be very cautious in what we understand as far as the time of the end, because this plan was set more than 2,500 years ago. Because there is a direct relation with the Creator, first son of Ibrahim, and then doing trade during his time. So then the trade of this time prepares then the stick of authority for the Ishmaelites in the future via petroleum, via crude. So then the restoration of the first stick, and then the second stick obviously is the reinitiation of the tabernacling on the land of Cush per the instructions of the prophet. So then we find ourselves with at least a rough sketch of the plan of the future. And we should be very focused, because any deviation from these can cause real problems. And thus far as our country is in a big trouble. We have done wrong with Syria, we have done wrong then with the Soviet Union. We should apologize very rapidly and then go along with the plan of the Soviets regarding Syria. And it is then the re-establishment or the refurbishment of the existing government, so then they can stabilize the situation, and then later then make a change of government if required. But no arming the rebels. They are not trained people. So then very important situations as far as these areas, because then when Michelle then becomes president, at least she has then taxation and freedom lined up. She receives then taxes from those packages, from those containers, and then direct trade then can establish itself. Then the Middle East, then the Syrian war then ends. Then the BRICS then starts. As we understand, CMC, the largest company in China, went to Africa. Raw materials are secured in the Pacific, and more raw materials from Africa. So the system is in place and backed up. So if our monetary system ruins, the system won't be shaken, because it is then a system then predicted a long time ago. So very important understanding this time.